A lot of people think that this stuff is just situations that have multiple heirs, multiple owners. And while that is true the majority of the time, as you well know, there are plenty of situations where we are dealing with the owner of record who is still alive, but there is some other aspect that they are dealing with that prevents the property that they would like to sell from being sold. Bad decisions that they make in life, where it's not paying taxes, not just property taxes, but actual income taxes to the IRS, and maybe there's some child support stuff going on. Any judgments or liens that are in excess value of the property itself, to where they think that they are upside down, and a lot of times they are. Most of the time, there is a multiple owner aspect of what we deal with. Each day, we're trying to locate these properties that cannot be sold through a title company. There's either multiple owners, judgments and liens, or a combination thereof.
What would you say the top 3 problems that cause real estate to not be able to be sold the traditional way? What were those top 3?
Definitely deceased owners.
The Dirty Deeds podcast with Logan Fullmer. Here we talk about distressed real estate and curative title work and how to make a living doing it, the tips and tricks of the trade. Today I have a special guest, Kyle Westbrook. He's a business partner of mine. And we're going to talk about his background, how he got here, and what his operation looks like today. Morning, Kyle. Welcome.
How's it going?
Good. I just saw you 5 minutes ago in the hall, so
I know.
These intros are a little awkward because you already had them this morning at 8 a.m.
Yeah, got to make them official, though.
Well, thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
You and I don't get to talk on this level. Usually we have our normal day-to-day, what's hot, what's going on stuff, but we don't talk about like the details like this very often, or the high level like this very often.
Yeah, this will be interesting. Yeah, it's fun. Some days I don't get to talk to you at all. I literally pass by you and we're too busy. So yeah.
So why don't you tell the listeners, you and I run a real estate business together.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell the listeners about what your kind of life looks like up to real estate?
Oh man, that's a good one. Up to real estate. You know, I kind of had a feeling very early on, like later in high school through early college, that I just had this. Now, did I know I was going to be in real estate? No, but that I had this personality for sales and just interacting with people. So I kind of figured I would be something in that space where I was either selling something or people interacting, but I had zero clue what I wanted to do, bounced around from thing to thing.
Were you a good student or a terrible student?
I was terrible at the execution, but really good at the attempt.
Okay, all right.
For what it's worth. So, man, all I really remember about my journey leading into real estate was bouncing around from kind of customer service role, sales role, bunch of jobs that I held for at the maximum like 6 months.
Oh, damn. You were that guy who I hate to look at his resume.
For sure. Like to a T. Like,
why?
I think I was bored. I got bored. I was, it sounds conceited, but like I would get into the job, learn the role, quickly become one of the top salespeople, and then I get kind of bored. I'm like, all right, I like the money I'm making now, but there's got to be more. I like the success I'm having now, but there's got to be more to this. This was too easy. So I would want to look around for more, and I would have that squirrel syndrome where I was like, oh, this looks nice. Let's try this new job.
You're looking for like the next deal high in a way. You just didn't know that's what it was.
That's the best way to describe it.
Am I capable of that job? It's better than this one. Let me go see if I can get it.
Exactly. Man, I even had at one point not a construction job, but I think it was like a janitorial job, to be honest, looking back on it now, at a construction site.
At what age?
This was college. So I think this was 2 or 3 years into college, so okay. Early 20s. The money was decent, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. But I was probably there for less than a month.
Oh my God.
Just sweeping behind a construction site.
Yeah, that'd get old.
Yeah, it did.
So when you grew up, tell me about your socioeconomic, like financial situation with family. A little bit of money, middle America, rich or poor.
So it's funny. I think a lot of people with these stories, they look back and they really don't know what money is at a young age, or the lack of it even. And I would definitely say that I came from little to nothing. I mean, I remember, first of all, parents split very early and had to kind of figure stuff out that way. It was just less than traditional household.
Yeah.
So having a kind of a factory worker-esque dad who had a blue collar, low income job. But you know, when you're little, you don't realize those things. It's
Did your parents ever talk about money?
No. Well, the parents weren't in the same household, so
well, at least they weren't like complaining about it. Like, we can't have that.
Right.
You don't have any money, so you didn't really know what it was yet.
Right, I had no idea what it was. So it's interesting now. You look at myself today. You know, having some money. I don't look at it as this thing that I want to accumulate in order to spend to get things, because I didn't have things when I was younger. So it's more of a goal, I guess, maybe is a better way to put it. But just how much higher can you take it? Or
I think for guys probably like us, I think there's a threshold of I'm good enough. And once you get to the point where you prove yourself that, the dollars are like a measuring stick and you prove you're good enough. But beyond that, you also came from probably, not a lot of huge resources or financial education. So at this point you say, I don't want to blow it. So I've proved I'm good enough. Now I want to make sure to preserve it. And it's not a lot of people for the jet or extra Porsches or whatever the hell it is. Is that right?
Preserving it is like, you couldn't hit the nail any better. I mean, that's a
fear-based reaction to I don't want to run out.
It's fear. It really is. And I didn't realize that. It's crazy you even ask that, because like thinking back, I have to almost remind myself now, like that's what it is, because coming from little to nothing, and then you have something when you get older, you're like, I got to keep this. I have to keep it. It's an interesting mentality.
So then what made you head towards real estate? Was it the money thing or was it chance?
It was a little bit of chance, but when I figured out what that chance was and why I gravitated towards it, it was like a light bulb had finally gone off. So later in my college career, I stumbled upon a leasing job at a property management company for the apartment complex that I lived at. I assumed these people got free rent. I was like, surely this is what I need to do so I can have free rent, lower my expenses. I was wrong. They did not get free rent, but they paid okay. So it was a win-win. I learned that I liked showing, because I was leasing. We would walk the property and show to prospective tenants the units that we'd have, the property amenities, et cetera.
Gotcha.
And I really liked the combination of describing a property, the real estate aspect, all the bells and whistles that something has, but also talking to somebody and convincing them this is the place to be, even though there's probably 2 or 3, maybe even 4 better places in town.
That was the sales part of the role.
That was the sales part. Yep.
So then after that, from what I recall about your story, you started researching a little bit, trying to figure out like kind of an idea that you could do outside of that job.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in real estate. I was in property management for a while. And I did that, worked my all the way up into like management and corporate. Enjoyed it. I really did. But what
was your salary roughly around then?
The last salary I had in corporate America was just shy of $100,000 a year, which was, I think it was 94-ish.
The good income, you're beyond the like, I might be missing meals or I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was a really interesting time, because it was one of those decisions I had to make was, okay, am I ready to really be in real estate? Which I'll tell you how I stumbled upon it. It was a few years of doing both at the same time. But yeah, it was a tough decision. It was one of those where it's like, I have this money coming in. Can I really sustain doing this full time? So it was just kind of scary. But yeah, I remember waking up one day thinking, I am working for somebody else. Do I want to do this for the rest of my life, pay their bills? I know I can do this on my own. Do I want to go into apartments like what I was working for at the time? Do I want to do something else? So for some reason, I just decided I'm going to get this audiobook, Gary Keller's Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I picked that book as my first book. Listen to that on the long, boring drive between San Antonio and Corpus Christi. And I don't know, that was the turning
point. And was your
point.
mind made up when you got to Corpus Christi? Something's got to change.
It was. I remember getting to Corpus, did my job, but I had to do at the apartment complex there that day. That night, I got to my hotel. signed up for Bigger Pockets at that time and just
Bigger Pockets part of like everybody's
I don't know
journey.
how it ends up being the first thing, but it is.
Their marketing is good. You forget about it, but that's like everybody's been through Bigger Pockets.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and it was just, I mean, it was a snowball from there. It was like learning this strategy, this thing, and then just implementing. It was like,
so how did you end up in your very first deal? Was that with a partner or was that by yourself? That was a house flip.
Yeah, it was a house flip.
In Killeen.
Exactly. So at the time, I was living in Leander, Texas, which is a suburb north of Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So Leander wasn't too terribly far away from Killeen. But I figured at the time, even with the research I had done, that if you wanted to get in real estate, you had to be a house flipper, which is what they show on TV. I figured that had to be it. So I found this company. It turned out to be New Western. Had no idea. Like, these guys are selling deals. So I'm going to buy one. Had no money in my account at the time. Very little savings. But figured out
how they hooked you up with a hard money lender that you only had to have 15 grand down.
They did. They did. They hooked me up. Scraped by enough of my savings plus the hard money loan to buy the property, and then just somehow figured out how to find other money along the way to do the rehab. So it was probably double the time it should have taken to do the deal. And I'll never forget, this is what really snowballed it. After I finally sold that deal, I was so defeated. Even though I did okay, I was so defeated how long that took and how mentally
I'll never
taxing.
get rich at this rate.
I'll never get rich at this rate. I said, there's so many people in this. There has to be another way. And I found wholesaling and ended up
on YouTube.
On YouTube and watched a few videos of that. My first wholesale deal was from finding about the concept of wholesaling to doing my first deal and getting under contract, which was probably about 30 to 45 days. I made more money on that wholesale deal than I did on my flip.
Oh, man. And a light went off. First deal, flip a house, make a little money, took forever. Second one's wholesale, light went off, and you're like, oh, man, this is what I'm going to do. Now, you wound up with a business partner and not too long of a time, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think my second wholesale deal, I ended up actually selling to what ended up being my business partner at the time.
Shit, that's how you met him?
That's how I met him.
Weird.
Yeah, it really was weird. But we talked, and we had a similar background in property management, and so we kind of clicked. And one thing led to another, and then we started doing deals together. So yeah, it was interesting how we met.
That's interesting because I know the business partner you met on the next deal you did later on.
Yeah, he's all right guy.
So how many deals did y'all get through during that partnership over how much time?
So the partnership wasn't too terribly long. Somewhere a little more than a year, I think what it was. So in that span of time, I probably have this exact data somewhere, but I'm going to go off the top of my head. I think we probably did 60 to 75, somewhere in that range deals. I mean, we were just...
That's a huge amount of deals for your first year. Your partner's probably already been doing it. You jump in and join him, and it just grows.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit was, the market at the time, it was hot. Yeah. And then the other part was just sheer effort. I mean, just grinding it out every day.
So you went from 100K in corporate, and you left your job at that point?
No, I was still.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I did those deals while still tag teaming my corporate America job.
Okay, so 100K comes in from that. Hundreds of thousands come in from this other deal.
Yeah.
So you're, I don't know, 400,000 in your income for this 12-month period.
Right.
So now it's like things are really happening. So now then the part of the story where I intersect is I recall you had a project in Austin that had a whole bunch of owners and some title issues. And I remember us connecting there from social media and we talked about it and said, you know what, this looks like our brand to deal. But where it went sideways is I remember this number for some reason, 25 people. I don't know why. I remember thinking there were like 25 people in the deal. When it was all said and done, we ended up with like 65 or 63 or something.
Yeah, it was around that.
I don't know that I really want to admit this at the time because I didn't want you to think like I was Bush League, which that would be unfair to say. But every time we kept adding heirs, I remember thinking, fuck, this is the most we've ever had. And the next week there'd be more. And the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, like where is this going?
Yep.
I started getting a little bit nervous, but I'm like, we're pregnant, we're having this baby, let's keep rolling, let's just see where it goes. So when you started to find those problems with it, once you get a contract on it, did you actively go look on the internet for someone to try to help, or had you just stumbled across our marketing and say, oh, maybe I'll call those guys?
Yeah, I actually remember it vividly. I was diving into the deal enough to the point where I knew there had to be a resource out there beyond an attorney and beyond a title company, because I'd tried those two routes and I got shot down. And I knew that there had to be another resource. I didn't even know what it was. A company, a person, something, of somebody who knew how to do this stuff. My thought process was, there's no way that these sort of deals just literally get thrown into the trash 100% of the time. Just something in my gut told me that. So I can't remember what I Googled, but it was Googling, and it was Texas-based, like Curative title, maybe that's what it was, something. And obviously there's not very much that just comes up on the Google searches when you do that. But somehow or another, your Facebook page had popped up, and something about Asset Resolution Partners had came up with it. And I Facebook creeped your page for a little while, noticed that you were putting out content on this topic, and that's how I reached out.
Yeah, that means our marketing works. I'm glad.
It does.
So the next section of the story is we do that deal together. After that, I specifically was like, man, this dude's sharp. He's hardworking. Like, I don't know what he's got going on, but he's like the kind of people that we need in this group. So I remember talking to you several times throughout that deal. Dave was working with you a little bit more on that deal than me, but I remember actively saying, I need to touch base with him every couple of weeks and just see what's going on. And it was almost like you meet some girl in your science class and you don't want to, like, you know, look too thirsty, but you still want to, like, kind of, you know, keep your hat in the ring there. So I remember kind of that, just touch and go, saying, hey, let's go hook up, let's talk and keep an eye on it. And I remember having a conversation specifically saying, what's your current operation look like? And I wanted to figure that out.
Yep.
And what I was looking for is, do you really love your current boyfriend? That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, I remember that very well. As a matter of fact, the timing couldn't have been better, because I was starting to have a little bit of resentment there at that time with my old business partner, just because of the workload that I thought that I was doing and what I was bringing to the table. I mean, I was acquisitions. He was dispoing some of it, but if anybody who's listening to this recalls the market in 2020 and early 2021, all you had to do is just raise your hand and say, I got a deal that is $2 below market value and it's selling. There wasn't much
had the
work.
harder job.
Easily. So,
and I remember you said you had about a third of the split. So you say, gosh, I'm doing more of the work and I have a much smaller split.
Yeah. It was there. The dynamics of that were an interesting one, but I was so new and fresh to real estate. You know, I took at the time what should have been or was a lesser than desirable split on all of our deals. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I'm thankful I did it, because I made a lot of money, got a lot of experience, but it was time. By the time that our paths crossed, it was time to be open to other options. So it was really good timing. That deal was insane, but yeah, it was good.
So the readers or the viewers know what we're up against here. That deal had about 62 or 65 owners.
Yeah.
We were all in for about 250,000 ish.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 50 or 80 was tax lawsuit money.
Right.
And then the balance was seller proceeds. I remember calling it was like every couple of days there'd be a new round of people that they're owners too.
Yep.
And attorneys putting deeds together. We're looking people up, calling them, saying, go here and close. There's like these clusters of closing all around San Antonio in our office. Yep. Austin, just all these different towns. People are spread out.
Yep.
And we're like tallying with this spreadsheet. We're like 32%, 41%, 44%. It was like tallying up.
That's crazy. I know.
And I remember thinking, whoa, like there was a time where I'm like, I don't know how we're going to finish this. And then there was also a time where we started coming down the hill on the other side. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to work. Mm-hmm. And we did. We sold it for $1.1 million, $1.2 million. There was about $1 million net in there.
Yep.
And that was your last deal, or that was, at that time, you'd already moved over and started working with us. So we paid you out under your old split. And then a new thing happened. So why don't you tell people what your business looks like today? Because you've been through a rendition of wholesaling commercial, which I don't want to talk about that. I want to focus on like your baby today is Curative Title Distress.
Yeah.
How would you explain that business to someone who's never heard or seen it before?
Yeah. So the best way I can describe it, to break it down in its most simple form, is identifying properties. Let me back up. A lot of people think that this stuff is just situations that have multiple heirs, multiple owners. And while that is true the majority of the time, as you well know, there are plenty of situations where we are dealing with the owner of record who is still alive, but there is some other aspect that they are dealing with that prevents the property that they would like to sell
Like quick
from
examples.
from being sold, such as bad decisions that they make in life, where it's not paying taxes, not just property taxes, but actual income taxes to the IRS, and maybe there's some child support stuff going on. Any judgments or liens that are in excess value of the property itself, to where they think that they are upside down, and a lot of times they are. But most of the time, there is a multiple owner aspect of what we deal with. So what we do in my team each day, or we're trying to locate these properties that cannot be sold through a title company. There's either multiple owners, judgments and liens, or a combination thereof.
What would you say the top 3 problems that cause real estate to not be able to be sold the traditional way? What would those top 3 be?
Definitely deceased owners. But as a one caveat, 1A, I would say deceased owners where the current day heirs just don't get along. They don't get along. It's family problems. It's one thing to have multiple owners, but another to have multiple owners and then they just don't get along. Is we could be brothers and we'd be the only two. 50-50.
It's really
super easy.
Relationship problems.
It's relationship problems. Yeah, that's a lot of it. So locating heirs that people don't know who they are, relationship problems amongst heirs, and judgments that are just so hefty that people don't know what to do with them. They think if they even do sell, they're not walking away with a penny.
So it sounds like most of your inventory is probably ownership disputes, lack of equity, and problems.
Yep.
The 90% of those things, folks, it's not worth their time anyway.
Right.
And I think they only transact to a professional that can create equity by resolving these issues and clearing them out. Otherwise, these are things that end up going to tax sale, mortgage foreclosure, or whatever, or they're stuck without a tax sale being perfected, literally in limbo for 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long time. I mean, we've seen lawsuits, tax lawsuits that are as short as 4 to 6 months. And for those listening that usually deal with mortgage foreclosures, that seems like a long time. But in the tax foreclosure world, that's actually pretty quick. And there's other ones that, like you said, they can go as long as 6 years plus.
So when the average person drives around, they don't see a house that has a big sign in the yard that says lots of judgments, behind on a bunch of taxes. How do you know they exist?
That is a great question. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes they surprise us. No, the answer to that is there's no easy way. There's really no easy way to just know. You have to kind of start with some of the more common problems and then kind of start peeling back layers and just seeing what those extra issues are. So,
do you have any regions that you like to peel those layers back on specifically?
Regions of the state?
Like, is it Maine? Is it Texas?
Yeah, I mean, we like Texas, and we like the big metropolitan areas. I mean, if anybody wants to, look at this and start poking around and see if they can find some of this stuff themselves, the counties with the larger counties that have the more robust websites are going to be the easier to navigate. So we'll try to see if an owner's deceased. It's the one that's going to be the easiest indicator of issues. From there, we'll look up the current day owners and say, or the deceased owners for that matter. We'll run their name through the county clerk and we'll see, okay, any judgments or liens that are attached besides the taxes. Are there any?
Got it. So if it's multiple owners, you say that's not enough to be a problem for me. They'll probably figure it out.
Right.
If it's multiple owners, plus this, oh, that's enough of a web.
That's a good indicator. Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. So we'll start reaching out. Once we kind of have that basis of understanding that there's this problem, and that problem, we'll start finding who the current day people are, make phone calls.
So it's interesting that I've actually watched this process happen. How much time would you say from the moment you identify something until the time you're on the phone? How much time would elapse on average?
On average is probably 15 to 20 minutes.
That's fast. There are some folks who'll sit around researching for days. People send me messages. I heard about this.
Yeah.
You're like quick. Why are you so quick? Instead of spending all the time to get all the information, why are you so quick to the phone?
You can't. You cannot research and research and research. If you're going to do this business, the key word is business. If you want to have a hobby and research people's issues and resolve those, you got a great hobby. Dive deep.
See, that's for the private investigators. That's for the bakers.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly. And they're great at it. But as a business owner, we got to make quick decisions. And, as the saying goes, time is money. We can't spend our entire day researching a file that might go nowhere. Once we make a call, we don't need to know the whole fact pattern. We just need to know a high level.
So once you get that first person on the phone, are you starting to get feedback from them saying, yes, there are other owners, or I'm the only owner? Yes, I acknowledge these problems. You're starting to lay it out. Are you like hard charging on that? Are you soft on it? What's your delivery look like there?
So that's also a good question. It's really interesting in this model. The soft delivery is the hard and fast delivery if you do it right, because by coming in and telling them, hey, I think these are some of the problems you might be going through, and oh, by the way, I know how to resolve those, they immediately are, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then all that other research that you didn't do on purpose, now that you know that they're willing to listen to you, they willingly tell you all the other stuff that they have going on that you would have found during your research, but now you know it.
Yeah, it's interesting from the early days. So like, I've not actually like looked all the way through your process, although we talked about it. I spent far more time doing research because I wanted to get it right.
Yep.
And I remember at one point after about 6 months, I would stay up late at night, like just digging in the office. And I remember thinking, this is just too much work.
It's a lot.
But I still need to do these deals. And I remember saying, fuck it, I'm just going to call these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I would literally do no research. I would find that there were one or multiple owners, and if it was behind on taxes, I'd just call them, and I quit looking for anything. It was like speed to lead.
Yeah.
And that was after about 6 months of just flat out being worn out and not liking it anymore. But we both kept the same point, just different ways.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of it comes with experience and a little bit of confidence too. I mean, 'cause once you've seen enough of these issues, you kind of have the ideology of like, I can probably clear the vast majority of these things, whether I know about it in advance or not. You just really want to look for the big major things that would destroy your deal. If you can eliminate those from the get-go, the rest of the stuff usually takes care of itself.
It's interesting because in the beginning, our processes have changed over time. I got a contract and got lots of option so that I could go figure out how to solve these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And there became a point where I almost found I felt lazy. And like I was explaining to one of the other partners, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I remember he's a nervous Neely and he's like, will it? You don't know. And my argument was, dude, our purchase price is $5,000. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
You're $2,500. I'm $2,500. Who cares? But I just remember knowing we've been able to solve 100 of these in a row.
Right.
It'll be fine. And it's almost like a walk by faith situation.
Yep.
So you also came to that same conclusion at some point.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's because of the volume that we do. We came to that pretty quick, but we've seen a lot. I mean, we have seen a lot of different scenarios. And because of that, we've seen a lot of the commonalities. You know what you're going to encounter the vast majority of the time, and you deal with the one-offs as they come.
If you were to let's pick 2 deals for like short case studies that are currently in the hopper. Don't have to say the address or the owner's name.
Okay.
Pick 2 of them right now. Let's talk about those 2. So what's the top one right now?
Top. Okay. I'm gonna throw this back at you. Top in the sense of possible profitability or just struggle?
Your highest priority. Like,
okay.
You got your high priorities. Like that's at the top of my list. What's at the top of your list?
I'm going to say there's this deal that really was at the top of my list a couple weeks ago. It has slowly went down simply because I've got it at a point where there's nothing else I can do. It's in the hands of our attorney who is kind of doing the last few things on it, but boy, am I excited about it once it's done. It's a package deal of 14 or 15 properties, and there is a component of it that's got an owner in another country.
Oh,
yeah, which has been part of the reason why it's drug out a little bit. But the aspect of the 14 to 15 properties, there's major potential on this package deal.
if you had to just roughly guess, rounded to the nearest $500,000, what do you think the packages were?
2.5.
What do you think judgments and liens and debts and all collectively, roughly?
Everything all together, taxes, judgments, liens, payouts to heirs, and estimated payouts to the remaining heirs, if I had to guess, will probably settle somewhere around the 250 mark.
So there could potentially be, after commissions, legal fees, whatever, possibly $2 million on the table.
Yes.
What do you think about this specific situation that causes folks that might have $2 million collectively worth of equity to sell for a fraction of that? The hurdle must be really high. Otherwise, they're going to keep trying longer.
Yeah, it boils back down to family problems. It really does. And the way that, and every state has the same problem. When somebody dies intestate, which is when somebody dies without a will, their ownership in properties will go to people based on whatever their family situation was like at the time of their death.
Mm-hmm.
Kids, no kids, siblings, no siblings. Are my parents still alive? Are they not? Am I married? Is it community property? All those things matter. And in some cases, the ownership goes in some really unique, funky directions where
might be unintended.
It's
from
unintended.
The deceased people.
Yeah, exactly. I would believe that most of the time the deceased parties wouldn't hope that the things would get to the point that they usually do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's usually because ownership doesn't just go straight down to kids all the time. Sometimes it does, but when you have situations like what happened here, it was a married couple who both had kids from prior marriages.
Oh, that makes it way worse.
And
shares split all directions.
They split all directions. Most people think that the first deceased party, their ownership would go just straight to the surviving spouse because it's community property, and that's not the case.
Right.
So what an added layer of complexity to this one is the first person who passed away, their kids didn't really know their parent. For all intents and purposes,
that makes it way worse.
They were they I think they met their father at birth, which is not really meeting them.
You don't remember, yeah.
You don't meet them.
I remember that day, Dad.
Yeah. And they were raised by their mom. So they didn't even know really who their dad was. They knew of him, but they didn't know him.
Wow. So then what was the tone of your first couple phone calls like on this one?
It was very gentle because when you call somebody, especially in that situation, and tell them why you're calling and how they're connected to it, it's pretty shocking. And we had to go through some
that's very private, very personal, very intimate.
Very private, and we are very aware of that. And we enter these conversations being very gentle and almost apologetic that we're having to talk about some of these things, but otherwise we have no way to kind of prove up why we're calling.
Yeah, so it's very intimate, and not many people know this fact pattern. And by you calling out of the blue, they would think this must be a scammer or something. But by you having information that's that intimate from your research,
right,
it probably lowers the hurdles, like the
barrier, the walls.
Walls.
You know, it's interesting that we get that.
The guard is lowered quick.
Yeah, we get about half the time where people will say, "Is this a scam? This seems almost too good to be true." Because once they hear the pitch, it's like you're offering me money for something I didn't even know I had ownership in, or I don't believe I have ownership in. They might know about the property, but because they don't know how the law works, they think that so-and-so has the ownership, not me.
Yep.
And when you tell them otherwise, they're like, this is a scam. But once you start telling them who their family members are, how they're connected, it lowers their guard because they're like, okay, if this is a scam, this is a highly researched scam.
This is a better scam than I've seen in the past, if it is.
Yep.
So if you wouldn't have called these folks, let's say you or no one like you ever called these folks, what would happen to the property?
For sure, they would go to tax auction.
And some investor would show up with a fistful of cash and buy it for less than it's worth. And all those owners would never even know, and it's done.
They would never know. Never know. Just go to tax auction like it never happened.
Has anybody else called these particular owners that you know of? Have they been trying to do this deal before?
On the particular one that we're talking about, no, nobody has contacted them.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's no competition in this case.
Not in
Was
this
that because
case.
you were calling folks that weren't easily connected to it? Through
Yeah,
the research?
this one is above average in complexity, not because of the fact pattern, just because the two people that we contacted at first had zero connection to their father, almost no documentation. We accidentally stumbled across how these kids were connected because we called a cousin of the deceased who said,
wow.
I think he had kids, and then that led us to a rabbit hole of finally contacting them. But the average person wouldn't have seen their information on a list anywhere.
Yeah, that's pretty like deep. So you found these folks, you get a hold of them, you realize it would have gone to probably the tax sale otherwise. What do you think that, so I know like folks who are investors or potential investors look at certain things here, if they're smart, one of the next things they would be thinking is, how long does it take to do a deal like this? Because if you're only going to invest possibly a couple $100,000, investor's mind is turning, I got to borrow $200,000-300,000 to flip a house. I can get that money. Well, they're there.
Right.
What's the next deal? How long do they have to carry this until they can actually get paid?
So that is a loaded question, as you probably know.
Maybe that's why I asked it.
I would like to say that they're very quick. Some are. We just, for some reason, choose some of the ones that take a little bit longer. But if you are selective with your deals and you don't go after ones that you inherently know, at least in the beginning until you get experience, that you know have like 15, 20 heirs, even double-digit heirs, you can do these deals in as quick as 30 to 45 days. I'm talking to get 100% ownership and everything is done. Paperwork is done. I am ready to put it on the market as if I just went through 3 to 4 months of rehab and a flip and then put it on the market then.
So then you've got market exposure. So on a minimum, on the fastest, you're going to get a month and a half.
Right.
Then you got to have a marketing window, a couple of weeks, maybe a month at most. And then you got a month to close. So 1, 2, 3 months, 90 days on the early end.
Yeah.
So on the long end.
The long end, what's our longest been? 2.5 years? Yeah. It's been, they can
2-3
go
year range.
They can go a long time. Some of those, some of the reasons why they go longer strategically, we pivot to other projects. Sometimes it's the legal system that just takes longer. It depends on the situation, but yeah, they can go a while.
I'm thinking across other balance sheets and asking myself, what's the longest? And I think around that 3-year mark is about where things start to end. And I've noticed, we've gotten to the point at sometimes where it's just not worth the time or the effort to fix it. Or some people are so cantankerous or the fact pattern is just no fun and forget it. We just let it go to the tax sale.
Right.
I think we have one selling this next week at the tax sale, and it's strange. You have the ability to pay the bills, but we choose not to. And that sheriff auction can solve pretty much all the title problems there are. So if you sit back and say, other owner wants to be a knucklehead and they want to let it go to the tax sale and they're telling us that, well, then let's just let them do it.
Right.
And then you go get your money on your excess proceeds.
Right.
So it's going to sell for a little less, sometimes a lot less than it would if it were just going to market with a realtor and had clear title.
But you're done.
But at the end of the day, you're done. You don't have to keep messing with it and it's over with. And in business, if you can hit home runs 90% of the time, dude, you're the king. So I think maybe that's why the 3-year backstop ends up being like your kind of your termination point, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. I mean, there's sometimes you just don't know what you're getting into. As well prepared as you could possibly be, there's always going to be some unforeseens. And ironically, some of the better deals that we do are due to the family issues are the same knuckleheads that prevent us from being able to do what we need to do when we get involved. And that's what makes us drag out to that 2 to 3 year mark where eventually sometimes we just say, county, finish the job for us.
Let y'all do it. It was going this direction anyway. I just took people out along the way. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Yep.
A lot of folks don't realize how much legal involvement is probably here in this space. And in the beginning, there's not as much, but as you get better, more experience and learn how it works, it's more. What would you estimate your legal fees are monthly right now?
Ooh, more than what I like to admit. It is probably on average at the moment somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a month.
So that's $250,000, maybe $300,000 a year
Yep.
on average. But if you have like a big specific performance lawsuit where we'll spend multiple 6 figures, You add that, your
Yeah.
standard spend is $200 or $300. But you might tack $100 to $200 on. So, that could wind up from $200 to $400 annually.
Easily.
Yeah, that's a lot. I know that might sound intimidating, but to a lot of folks. But when you break it down to units in process, right now your inventory is somewhere around 100 properties.
Yeah.
When you start to spread that across properties, just say you spend $500,000 a year across 100 properties, that's, what was that, $5,000 per file average?
Yeah, I was. That's the number I was going to throw out. I mean,
bad.
I think you're somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000 per file, just on like normal legal
Dude,
stuff.
that's less than a lot of realtor fees.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a no-brainer to get legal involved sooner than later.
Yeah.
Don't like the things to necessarily snowball because you get legal involved, but it definitely moves things down the track.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's your hot button property. So what's the second hot button project right now?
Let me think about this. Okay, I got a good one. We have one that's going on the market. Should be today. That's the goal, at least. If not today, it would be tomorrow morning. Everything's done. We have a deal that is in Bastrop County. That's I think roughly 10 acres. That was going to auction next week, as a matter of fact. And we got into this deal, I think, 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. This is one of the
fast.
Yeah, this is one of the better ones where.
Wait, you're letting it go to the sale?
No. It was going to the sale, and we got it stopped. This is one of the better stories on timelines. So, like I said, we knew of the deal about 3 weeks ago. Same day we found it, we did the research, made the call. Ends up being one owner. It's
that's simple.
Yeah, super easy.
I didn't even know we had any of those right now.
Yeah, they're rare, but they're there. But it was a deceased owner situation. It just so happened to be one owner, one kid that ended up being the owner.
Okay.
And he currently lives in Vegas, the Vegas area. Deceased father, who never lived in Texas, was based in, I think, somewhere in California at some point. I don't know why he bought. So
dad inherited land, or he bought here?
No, dad bought here. Dad bought here. And again, I have no idea why he chose to buy.
Kid didn't even know this existed, did he?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
No idea. So we call the kid up, and of course he's like ecstatic when we tell him he's getting money out of nowhere. Ended up paying like $30,000. I mean, we paid him a good chunk. I mean, it's above average for us on a per heir payout. But since it was a single owner, we could pay a little bit more. We didn't mind it.
That's one of the reasons I like a little larger size deals as opposed to like the tiny deals.
Yep.
Even though you're buying at an extreme discount because of all the risk and all the things that come along with it, you can still pay out material dollars. Somebody calls me and says, "Hey, Logan, I need you to come do all this stuff, and I'm going to give you $1,500. I'm like, fuck it, I ain't getting out of bed for that.
Yep.
But when someone says, "I'm going to give you $30,000, they might be taking a big discount, but that's real money. That's money that can change a life right now.
Yep. Agreed.
That makes your pitch more compelling.
Yeah. So we contracted with that guy, actually beyond contract. We did the full closing package with him within 48 hours of talking to the guy.
Woo.
So we learn about
what's his age? If you had to guess.
Yeah, upper 20s. Upper 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. So
call me in my upper 20s and tell me you got $30,000. What
30 grand out of the blue? Yeah, that's amazing. And he would have never known about this. It was going to go to, next Tuesday. Poof, it's gone forever. So yeah, I mean, this deal's, I'm still just like, wow, we just get lucky sometimes. So we get this ownership in 48 hours. I mean, the closing package is done. I mean, we own it.
So 30 to him. How much to the tax office?
Right around 20. So we're 50 all in.
You had to roughly, what's it worth?
That's the fun part. So we've already got a survey. We've got everything. We got a clean commitment even. We already got commitment back. It's ours. It's clean. Comps say that it's worth in the 340-ish range all day long.
So let's say you sell it for a little less than market, plus realtor fees off, $275, $300 net on a 50 spin. That's $250 net.
Yep. I was basing numbers on $250 just to be safe.
And on your quick timeline too.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you find that deal?
That was a upcoming tax foreclosure.
Got it. So the order of sale had already happened. The judicial foreclosure was already executed. Sheriff was going to go sell this thing in 21 days, and you showed up before.
Right.
Do you have any pushback with that child seller person? Did they negotiate with you, or is this your number out of the gate? What'd that look like?
If I remember right, this was Mauricio's deal. So I didn't have the conversation, but I was right there for it the whole time. I don't think he had much negotiation on price. And we wanted to present a number where because we knew he was the guy. We wanted to make it enticing enough to where he wanted to take it.
Compelling.
But we did have a decently long conversation with him from the get-go just to prove up who we were, how he's involved. It was more of trust building rather than numbers negotiating.
That makes sense. That's why sometimes I notice a lot of like small and mid cap investors, they're cheap almost to their own detriment. And a lot of guys would still offer 5,000 over payoff.
Yep.
And you're wise in that could be a real problem. If they walk away, you missed a relatively clean smoking deal by being cheap. Pay them 30, pay them 50. Who cares? It's still a great deal.
Yep.
So, all right. So go back to that kid whose parents just split up, living in not the sexiest house on the block or the greatest neighborhood at all. I think I'm good enough. I'm going to get there one day. I don't really know. Lower esteem, probably, lower confidence, lower socioeconomic totem pole. What would you tell that kid about your place today, this deal? It just, I mean, how do you tell yourself about that in that place?
That is a really interesting conversation to have if I could have it.
What would you say?
Like, man, just hold on. You go through this just crap when you're younger in those sort of situations when you're bouncing around from household to household and you don't really have like a true place to call home. And as you get a little bit older into your teenage years or preteen age years, for me, it's like, okay, I'm starting to understand we don't have a whole lot, and you think this is how it is because that's how you're raised. And then you get into the big world and
like, oh shit, I'm fucking poor.
I'm poor.
And I'm not good enough. And I hope I can be.
And
I think I am. But until you do it, you
just don't know. You don't know. And thank God I had this thing in my head for some reason that just said, there's something better to this. There's something better than this. There's something better than this.
And the next step of the conversation to that little kid is, this ain't one deal. This is one of 103 in my pipeline.
Right. For some people, I think it's like, they do a deal like this. They watch a YouTube video and they make a little bit of money and then they coast because they want to live on that. They want to blow it. And for me, it was like proof of concept. And then it's just off to the freaking races. It was.
So what's the goal on that? You're off to the races. What's the goal?
I don't know. Right now, I just have I enjoy what I'm doing. I like the thrill of the chase.
Mm-hmm.
I like the thrill of the chase more than I like the income. I think you know that.
Yeah.
I like the thrill of the chase. I like the hunt. I like resolving problems. I like having these conversations with people.
I fixed it. I won.
I fixed it. I won. And I'm helping people along the way too, so it's really, it's the best of a lot of worlds. So, I think a goal for me right now is I've achieved a lot of them, but just stability and keeping that stability in my life for my family, for me, for the people who are closest to me, my partners, my employees, friends, family, and keeping a consistent business, really, because it's such an up and down world. You never know where it's going to go. So the biggest thing for me is not the income. That's great. That's a great second component, but having to do all this and do it consistently.
Yeah. That's a part that, when folks are new in business early on, they're just trying to get a deal done. They're trying to get the next deal done. They're really putting it together. And there becomes a time where you're beyond that specific deal. You're beyond your pipeline. Now you've got an administrative person, some salespeople, a finance guy. Like you have like a group here. Now you're running a business. So while you're in the deal flow often, you're also like running this operation at times.
Right.
That's a whole new thing. I remember when I got to that point, I remember thinking, I have to think about things differently. I have to look at things differently. And I always started to think in longer time horizons.
Yeah.
12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years. What do these decisions affect then? So that was like a different look.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man. I mean, you get to that point where the income it's great. It is great. But your goals really start to change and your motivations change. And it's not about the dollar, even though that is why we all show up. I get it.
That's why you got to make the first
money.
day. That's why you came.
That's why you came. But your goals start to shift more like, for example, how can I make processes better for my employees? How can I make JV partners' life easier? How can I mentor them to where they can find deals better? It's conveying knowledge, and for me, putting things into place where people can do it easier.
It's a different set of goals in a different like place. Yeah. So where do you see this business that you're running in, let's say 5 years from today? Wait, let me back up. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 sales folks, you, an administrative person.
Yep.
So it's a 4-person team. Where do you see it in 5 years?
5 years, I want to have some more sales guys. I don't want to have this big corporation of a company. That's not my goal. That's not my desire. And frankly, I think I would go crazy trying to run it. It's a lot. But I want to expand what we're currently doing. I have some goals of getting into some other states more consistently. One other state at some point in the next, year and a half, 2 years would be nice. I don't know, man. When you're in when you're in the grind every day, I don't look up very often, and goals and different motivations just kind of, for me, just kind of happen
along the way.
They happen along the way. I know that's not a great answer, but I just keep my head down and keep going.
I feel the same. I had a lot of people at times in the career saying, well, tell me about your goals. If you don't have goals, you'll never hit them. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I just made $1 million on a deal. Like, get the fuck out of my face about goals.
Yeah.
Just because I don't operate like you do doesn't mean I'm not going somewhere.
Right.
And people would always say, you have to set goals if you're ever going to hit them. I'm like, well, then I'm just not going to set a goal I'm not going to hit, but I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, for me, it was a little different. I just wanted to show up and do as much as I could that day as possible that I'm capable of and do the most. And
yeah, the whole day-to-day concept, it's so cliche, but that's literally how I operate. I've coached people on saying set goals and stuff, but I'm a little bit of a hypocrite with that because I don't have these big aspirations. They just I wake up one day after doing a bunch of deals and I got some money in the bank account and my family's taken care of.
Those are all really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you told me about 2 hot button like good deals. Tell me about a bad deal. What's one you got right now that you're like, I wish I didn't have that?
Well,
because they have.
I probably have more than what I'd like to admit on that. Let me think.
How'd that happen?
Some of the inventory is some older inventory that's a little stagnant, and we've learned a lot of lessons over the last 18-ish months. And some of our regrettable deals that we still have are probably from the earlier end of that 18 months. That means
your process is improving along the way, but because it's a longer sales cycle or conversion cycle on some of those messier ones, it takes time to work through the backlog.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have one that I can recall right now. It's nothing major. It's not like we sunk a ton of money into it. It's just on the balance sheet. It's a vacant lot that, hindsight, we got excited about getting into it because it's so cheap. I think it might for me personally, I think it might set the record for the cheapest acquisition. It was $750. So I was like, why not?
Real estate for $750 deal.
$750. Now we had to pay some taxes on top of that, which was like, it was less than $10,000. I can't remember the number, but it was still cheap. But the heir payout, which was 100% earner, was $750.
Cheap.
Still cheap. So
even with $10,000 in tax, you're in it for $11,000.
Yeah. So we get into the deal, and come to find out there is, and we knew this going into it, but we still chose to do it. There was some issues that are kind of some unforeseens on the original plot of the area of where these lots are at. This is in Fort Bend County. If anybody's looking to pick up lots in that area, just be careful. There's a certain neighborhood that.
Wait a second. Is this the one that the house was built on the wrong lot?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, keep going.
That's the one. So we can't decisively say where the boundary lines are, even after
what about
getting
a
a
surveyor?
survey. Even after getting a survey, the surveyor has one opinion. The county has a completely different opinion, and they are even telling us, "Oh, we know that survey. We're working with that survey company and others." Basically the documentation and the land records that the survey company is using to make their survey, for some reason, the county is claiming it to be inaccurate, or it's something is wrong. I don't know. It's the most confusing thing I've ever been a part of, but they are adamant that it's not correct. What we should do probably
My next question is, okay, then point to the one that's mine. Okay, I'll take that.
well, they can't. We've tried to ask them that. This is one of those times where we should force the issue from a legal standpoint and just say, what is ours? But the sales price and what the potential income is,
so low.
It's so low, it so quickly fell to the bottom of our priority list. And then here we are, probably about a year later, talking about it.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So do you let it go to the tax sale?
That's a consideration because we didn't actually end up paying those taxes in because we didn't have to.
Intentionally.
And they actually are trying to get it to a tax sale. They are.
So what's a lot worth over there if it didn't have any title issues or locational issues?
Yeah.
What do you think it'd be worth roughly?
25, 30K.
Okay. So if you're in it for 10, 11, 12, and let's say $5,000 in taxes, if it sells and it sells for half of what it's worth, you'll actually get your money back and make a couple of bucks.
Yep.
And pass this problem on to the next dude.
Right.
From what I know about tax sales, not enough diligence is done. Someone's going to buy that and someone's going to take you out of your trouble.
Right. Yep. That's
Fair enough.
that's what we're thinking of doing at this point.
A lot of people would say, oh my gosh, $11,000 into a deal and it's stuck. That's like scary, but it's easy when you're looking at a business from making business decision to say, I get the money back in a couple of months or maybe a year or two. I won't lose any money and I can move on to something else.
Right.
Even if you're going to go fix it all, if you can't fix it simply, it's not worth it if you only make 20 grand. So
Right.
I'm done with that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
That makes total sense. What kind of technical advice would you give to folks? Because what you're talking about is some very high level. And I know about a 20% of our listener base is relatively new and kind of feeling around in this. What technical advice would you give them?
Man, I'm going to give you some advice that maybe other people in this space would give. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. But I'm very much a act first, think later to some degree. I mean, you've got to do some research on this stuff ahead of time. But my advice would be to don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. You can become such an expert that you'll never do a deal. You'll become such an expert that you will never do a deal.
You'll be so smart, but you can't pay your bills.
Exactly.
Where would you tell them to go find their first deal?
I would tell them the tax delinquent list, not even the tax foreclosure list, not the tax lawsuit list, because there's layers. You're delinquent, then they file a lawsuit, and then after so long of the lawsuit, then you get to the tax foreclosure.
And those are three different lists, more or less, that you can buy.
More or less. And I'm saying go to the bottom of the barrel, tax delinquent, because there's so much more opportunity there. And by the time it gets to the tax foreclosure, yeah, it's the lowest hanging fruit of like priority time wise, but the juicier deals, somebody's already picked them off along the way, or somebody's paid it off because there's been so much time they figured it out. If you get earlier on, you can get to the deal sooner.
You're kind of first pig to the trough. Yeah. Plus, you have some time. So I would look at it as the folks have the least experience. Go for the ones that have the least deadlines, like the tax delinquent.
Yes.
And then as your experience builds and you start to build capitalization, you really know what you're doing, then you start like inching your way up the chain until a 21-day tax sale notice, like get and go.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what I would do. Because the time restraints are going to make you feel like you got to make decisions that are probably not wise. Either spending too much money or doing paperwork wrong or making a judgment call that probably isn't the best, because you feel like you have to make a decision.
You're rushed. You don't know what to do. It's like when they're sneaking on the quarterback, like, uh-oh.
Yep.
The best decisions aren't made by the quarterback in times like that.
Exactly.
All right. We're wrapping up here, getting towards the end. If you were to give some advice to anybody who's out there outside of how to get your first deal, they're sniffing around this. They kind of think they want to take a stab at it. What kind of advice would you tell them outside of don't overthink it?
If you're wanting to do a deal like this and you're hungry and you're starting to look stuff up, but maybe the confidence level there isn't there, or maybe the capital isn't there, I would say don't be afraid to reach out to somebody who's in the space. And this isn't a pitch for a JV per se, but I will say seriously, we have done a lot of deals with people who are dipping their toes in this business model. And they have learned a lot just by working alongside us. So I'd say gain some exposure through somebody who's already doing it.
So if they see a property down the street from their house that's tax delinquent, should they send you the address?
No, I wouldn't
What's
say
that look
that.
like?
I wouldn't say that. So you made a really good comparison recently, and I'll use this. There's a major difference between a prospect and a lead. A prospect is what you just described. It's an address.
House down there that's delinquent.
It's this 123 Main Street owes $5,000. Do you want to do the deal together? I'm like, not really. I have no idea anything about it. Do you know anything about it? Preferably somebody who would bring us something has made a phone call, made some sort of effort. You ain't got to have it right per se, but some sort of effort to try to understand the fact pattern. Is the owner deceased? Did you contact the owner or maybe a kid or a spouse of an owner? And preferably you've had a conversation. So
you don't want prospects. You want a lead. You want to know, do they want to sell or not? What's that kind of look like? Give me some basics.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Some sort of feedback to go on other than us just doing all the research and doing it for
Shot
you.
in the dark. So if they want to get a hold of you, once they've got a prospect converted into a lead, how should they get a hold of you?
Best way to get in touch with me is going to be an email. I can't even get back to people on text these days. My email is kyle@arpusa.com. That's going to be the best way.
Got it. All right, Kyle. Thanks for coming on today, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. This has been good. I'm really excited for your podcast to take off. I think it's going to do really, really well.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.